Hello, hola, ¿cómo estás? Today is October 6th, it is a Wednesday. Just driving to work. First main thought that comes into my mind is the very important concept of those that are waking up partially and the danger therein of stopping with the little bit of truth that they have uncovered. As one has greatly and wisely said, a partial truth leads to a full lie. And what is this in regards to? Well, in this post-COVID world, unfortunately that's what we'll be referring to it as, is this has been a major pivot point, and it's not that we're pivoting away from evil so much as think of it as plotted on a graph. This is kind of the next point on the graph, and now we're going exponentially worse. But in this post-COVID world, there has certainly been what many would call a movement of great awakening amongst the people. The first danger to warn against is the possible of the fallacy of because me then all. So as an individual comes to learn something, they then perceive the world around them and those around them as also or potentially learning or knowing to the same degree or to the same information as them, and that is not necessarily true. It could just be that now that you know something, you tune into others that know it as well. It's very hard to prove unless there's some sort of Gallup poll, however, of how much someone has become awakened. The other and much more dangerous problem associated with this is, unfortunately, and I try to say this as objectively as possible, unfortunately most of those waking up, and I am not using this in quotes to also reference woke. That's a completely different understanding of waking up. It's almost the opposite. But many of those that are waking up are only waking up partially. If they were a 0 out of 10, now they're a 1, maybe now they're a 9, but they're not a 10 out of 10. And I can only express this because, and I will qualify this, because I now know that I have found or discovered that key, that all-important key to unlock the door to answer the question which all the other people are unable to answer. And I'm not blaming them, or I'm not holding that against them. The ability to answer why these things are happening. Most people are waking up, and this is just the nature of the progression. You literally cannot put the cart before the horse, and I applaud the efforts of everyone waking up. And this is what I say to you: do not stop. That is where you commit an error. That is where you get sent back to the back of the line in terms of the actions that you are taking. Do not stop. As Passio loves to say so many times at the end of his show, there are only two mistakes that can be made along the path of truth: not starting and not going all the way. Okay? And most people are not going all the way. Very important and very encouraging that more people are seeing the symptoms, and well, hell, they ought to. The post-COVID world literally ripped the mask off of evil and said, look at us, we're the ones behind the scenes. This, metaphorical. In other words, the symptoms became so obvious that only those, and the vast majority are still those, that had their head either up their ass or in the sand, could not help to see the blatant nonsense, for lack of a better word, but just pure evil that was transpiring. So suddenly anyone that was maybe subconsciously on the fence or had been dabbling in this kind of information started to say, this doesn't make sense. This isn't adding up. Something's awry here. I smell a rat. Indeed you do. However, decline. The most important part is being able to fundamentally answer why. And most people in their journey are not broaching that. That is the basis of the occulted information, the hidden information. In fact, the the evil players behind the scene almost don't care, or really don't care, that you discover the symptoms, because if you try to only treat the symptom, you will never get to the root causal factor to eradicate the disease of pure lunacy, psychopathy, and evil that is actually manifesting and creating these problems. So let's give an example, and this is the most obvious and blatant one. Many people are putting the pieces together, adding the numbers up, and saying, look, the government is on health, because that's the most pertinent here in COVID and post-COVID. They say, look, if the government really cared, they would be banning tobacco and not banning us going outside. They would be encouraging exercise, not locking us down. They would be subsidizing healthy food, not blah, 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 blah. And they have this list of things that the government actually did that were heinous, atrocious, and against all our natural rights. And then they have these lists of obvious things that are helpful and beneficial to someone, especially if they're sick. And they're saying, well, if they knew better, they would do this. And they're able to grasp that the government just isn't acting in our best interest and is acting somewhat maliciously. But what they cannot bring themselves to say or admit is this government and all governments, regardless of the party, must be abolished ASAP. Their very existence is what is creating this problem and manifesting our slavery. Never mind how they're treating us in this situation. Okay? There are many out there that would believe they could simply vote someone else into office and suddenly all this would change. So they're on the path, so to speak, because they recognize the symptoms that they're creating. But the root causal factor is recognizing that authority does not in any way exist in nature, and our system of governance, by definition, is a form of slavery. And until you realize that every institution and every form of authority that seeks to control people in any way is absolute bunk and nonsense and has to go. It is not merely the symptoms that they are generating that must be eradicated, but the very nature of their existence itself. Okay? This is merely but one example to give you all an idea of the great work that lies ahead and to what degree we have to fight the good fight, so to speak. And the importance of elevating consciousness by thorough research and continual discovery of truth in order to make it to the end of the path of truth, so that we don't stop halfway and pitch our tent up at base camp 1 or base camp 2 or something of that nature. We have to get all the way to the Everest peak of understanding truth. That is the importance of natural law, and that is exactly what I've set out to do. And I will be calling natural law in future discussions cosmic gravity as well, because I think that the weight of that word settles a little more distinctly with people, although I will always be speaking synonymously natural law as well, so that folks can understand. But anyway, enough for today, October 6th. Cheerio.